I just hate you so much. Hello all my otaku friends, my name is Prof Otaku and welcome back to my channel for the September manga reading log. This month was a crazy month for me. I read 53 volumes. Honestly, I'm quite surprised. But this month was a special month because I read a ton of new series. I'm just gonna be a martyr for the cause today. What was good? What was bad? What should you pick up? And what should you definitely avoid? Stay tuned. And before we get started today, just some quick housekeeping things. Of course, as always, no spoilers. I promise you, I will never tell you what happened specifically in the series. I want to give you a synopsis. I want to tell you if it was good or bad, or what are some interesting characteristics of the new series or interesting characteristics of the current arc that we're in, whether it's continuing to be good or continuing to be bad. Also, I'll leave timestamps down below. We're first going to start with the new series with brand new volume 1s, and then move on to the new series to me that I read bigger chunks of volumes, and lastly we'll go into the ongoing series, the stuff that I read last month that I'm continuing this month, as well as ongoing series in my collection with brand new volumes like volume 30s or volume 15s, etc, etc. All right, and with that all the way, let's get started with our very first manga, brand new volume 1, Box of Light. Now look at this cover. Doesn't it look pretty sick? Wrong, it sucked. So the premise is quite an interesting one. You have this convenience store that borders the boundary of life and death. You have people who go into this store that are basically crossing over to the other side, and in this convenience store basically decides whether they continue on to the afterlife or they're able to go back into the real world. So the problem with this manga is it's supposed to be avant-garde, it's supposed to be philosophical, it's supposed to make you think about stuff, but honestly, I didn't think about anything at all. It just wasn't executed well. So this is a very episodic manga. You have these different characters and you're following their life in the convenience store, as well as the customers who come in and their stories as well, and kind of the depressing scenarios that got them there in the first place. And of course there's supposed to be some sort of life lesson to be learned, whether it's to not work so hard or to cherish your friendships or yada yada, but it just didn't execute it well. I found a very strong disconnect with all of the characters, and I just don't think it executed these stories enough for me to grasp what they were trying to say. But alongside these episodic philosophical stories, you get these chapters where you're following the characters who run this convenience store, and then you're just going into some like supernatural action stuff that has no pertinence to any sort of philosophical life lesson stuff, and it just doesn't work. It's a very confusing way to just do the pacing of this manga. So overall, I think it was just trying to do too much at one time, and it's just a big swing and a miss for me. 5 out of 10, do not recommend picking this up. All right, next up here is another 7 Seas title. This is called Dungeon People, and just like Box of Light, I picked this off of a cover buy and another manga in the 7 Seas Russian roulette that I deeply regret getting. Like I said before, I take the hit as a manga tuber so that you just don't have to. So this manga is actually pretty simple. It follows this girl right here. Her and her dad explore a dungeon. There's 10 levels to this dungeon. The dad actually dies in like the 7th or 9th level. And so it's more of a revenge story of this girl wanting to become the dungeon master, and she gets all the way to level 9 and she can't beat this last boss. But then the god of the dungeon comes in and says, hey, would you like to move from an adventurer to somebody who maintains the dungeon, organizes all the monsters and treasures, etc, etc. So then she goes into more of a role reversal. She goes into the administrative side of the dungeon and just helps run this dungeon for other adventurers to go through. So yeah, it's a really weird premise, and I just don't think this filled a hole in my heart that I was hoping that this manga was going to. What I wanted this manga to do was provide a reprieve from a lot of serious series that I'm reading, something funny, something lighthearted, something cute, something actiony, and yeah, it does that, but I just think that there's better series out there. This manga is like getting vanilla ice cream with like no syrup, no sprinkles, no nothing, and you read it and you go, okay, like, yeah, that was a thing. So I am gonna pick up one more volume of this because I just wanna see where it goes. There's definitely some interesting lore, some interesting layers behind there, especially with this girl, specifically her dad and what her dad's impact or influence was on this world. So I'll be curious to see where that goes, but overall, it just wasn't the best thing in the world. Next up, another cover by from 7Seas, because that's how we play 7Seas stuff. We have A Chinese Fantasy, The Dragon King's Daughter, Volume 1. This is a short story collection of Chinese folk tales done in a manga format, and overall it was pretty interesting. Not the most mind-blowing thing in the world, but I did enjoy it. I really like the art style. I like the simple storytelling. With these short stories, it's not going to be something where you're going to read the story and go, what is the lesson to be learned here? There is no lesson. You're just following a really interesting folktale. So don't go into this super seriously, and I think that you're going to enjoy it a lot. I like that we get something like this from 7Seas. It's definitely different in the manga world. I like these shorter story collections. I like that we're going more into the Chinese histories, historical fiction side. So I will continue to pick this up, but it's very expensive at $15 a volume. So because there's no big overarching story, and because there's nothing like really big to grasp on here, this is not something I recommend for everyone. Actually, I think most people won't like it for that price point, but for me personally, as a manga tuber, I do want to try out some really interesting and unique things, and that's one of them. Next up here is a manga I'm super excited to talk about and show you guys, because I just don't think enough people are picking this up, and that is Dinosaur Sanctuary Volume 1. In layman's terms, this is just slice of life Jurassic Park. You've got this girl here who is starting her first day as a dino keeper in Dino Land, and it follows her and her crew of zookeepers as they take care of all these different dinosaurs. So this checks all of the boxes for a perfect slice of life. Number 1, an interesting world. Number 2, fantastic characters that are really deep and interesting. And number 3, using that world to its advantage and creating very interesting episodes that are very varied. Very varied. That was a terrible phrase to use. The artwork is absolutely on point here. The dinosaurs are drawn so well, and what I really love about this is that it's very accurate in terms of the sciencey stuff, because the mangaka is correlating with a dinosaur research assistant, and then all of the accuracies of the dinosaurs are portrayed very well in this manga. They also explain a lot of the dinosaur stuff in here too, so it definitely makes this really cool to read. So yes, I highly recommend Dinosaur Sanctuary. I didn't know what to expect with this manga, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I can see this going somewhere super cool. Next up is Crossplay Love Otaku X Punk Volume 1. This is weird. You have a boy, he likes this girl. You have this boy who likes this girl. They both cross-dress as girls so that they become friends with each other. So that means that the boys indirectly like each other, but they both like the girls, and so the girls are friends. So yes, this is a rom-com boys love, I guess you could say, but I think it's really just done excellently. I was very surprised. The first 2 chapters were very underwhelming. The stories that were presented in the first 2 chapters don't do it justice to how funny this could actually be. But what I do love is all the interchanging relationships, how the 2 boys interact with each other, how this boy interacts with this girl, how this boy interacts with this girl, and then how the 2 girls interact with each other. So there's a lot of different combinations that can happen, which I think in the long run will provide a lot of interesting interactions and very beautiful episodes moving forward. And I also love this release by 7Seas. I like the embossed cover. I like how colorful it is. I like that it's in the smaller size. So definitely A+ from 7Seas. Highly recommend Crossplay Love. Definitely something that I was like, oh yeah, that premise sounds really funny, and it was actually executed pretty well. All right, and next up here is Kowloon Generic Romance Volume 1. This was super big on Mangagram and MangaTube. Wow, I just forgot how to say like what I do. But this was super big last month. I finally got around to it. If you don't know what this is about, it follows this girl. She works in a real estate agency company in the city of Kowloon, which is actually based off of a real place, but this is presented in the distant future. It's a big metropolis, more of like a slum. It has a lot of nostalgia to it. Quite an interesting world, to say the least. And this is basically a slice of life romance. It presents slice of life here at the beginning with a big twist at the end. The twist is done excellently, makes me want to pick up volume 2. I like the slice of life aspect because it does what I like in a slice of life, which is use the world to its advantage. And this is definitely one of the most creative worlds out there. And this artwork here is one of the top 5 artworks that I've read in manga this year. I'm definitely going to be doing a video on top 5 artworks, and this is definitely going to be on there. I love the attention to detail that this provides. It creates an immersion into the world, and it makes the manga feel really full as I'm reading it. So there's not a lot of blank space going on, which I really appreciate, because the way they do the depths of the lines and the shadings, it just really works. So yeah, some people like this, some people hated it, some people thought it was okay, and actually for me, I gave this like a 9 out of 10, 9.2 out of 10. I really liked it. So from a slice of life guru as myself, I highly recommend this one. Next up here from Viz Media, we have Rooster Fighter Volume 1. It's about a rooster who fights monsters, and that's basically it. It's very episodic in nature, and honestly, there's just not that much context. I mean, it's literally how it is. You have a rooster that fights things, and I don't know where this story is gonna go. I can see this being like Way of the House Husband, where I read 5-6 volumes and it's just this episodic like niche manga, and I just don't care for it anymore. Like, oh yeah, it's funny, but like I'm just kind of done with it. So I hope that this adds some more layers to it, because there's like no layers in volume 1. I think the only thing interesting about this manga is how the monsters come to be, and that's presented at the end of the volume. So I think that's really cool, and something to hopefully explore down the line in some way, shape, or form. But overall, it was just okay for me. Definitely overhyped in my personal opinion. Artwork is fantastic, but it really just doesn't have that much going for it. So like 6.75 out of 10. Okay, the rest of these volume 1s are all manga that I have talked about in previous videos, or I'm going to talk about in some future videos that I don't want to talk about it now. I just want to acknowledge that I've read them. First up, for the Isekai video that I just put out, I'll leave a little card. We have a light novel here, The Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady, as well as the Savior's book story in Another World. That's not right. The Savior's Book Cafe Story in Another World, volumes 1 and 2. Highly recommend you check out my first impressions for those. And also from Kaiten Books, I have My Dad's The Queen of All VTubers volume 1 and Gotcha Girls Core volume 1. I will be showing you guys my first impressions of these in next Sunday's Should You Read Sunday. Okay, now we're going to move on to the new series to me that I've read. I read a bigger chunk of these volumes, and I want to first start with this series with a huge trigger warning of suicide and depression. So if you don't want to hear that, you don't want to hear a very personal story of mine, go ahead and skip forward. I'll leave a timestamp to the next series. But I read volumes 1 to 5 complete of Orange. This is a shoujo manga, very highly acclaimed, and I really enjoyed this read. So without giving any spoilers away, it basically follows these group of friends in high school as they go and they try to save the boy in the middle from a certain event that happens. So of course it's high school shoujo slice of life, but there's also a really cool supernatural aspect in here, which I think just elevates this to a whole new level. It is a very easy read. The way the paneling is, it flows great. The story is well paced. All of the characters are super likable with great personalities, and it just doesn't hang on an idea too long. So this was really a fun read. A lot of people do have problems with the 7C's release, with these being 3-volume omnibuses, but I do think they feel pretty good in the hands. Obviously, don't throw that book apart and break that spine, but overall it's not too bad. Now, the personal thing I do want to talk about is actually the biggest problem in this manga for a lot of people, which is our main character guy in the middle here. You know, with his certain situation, people are frustrated with the way that he acts with his friends and sort of the reactions and the inner turmoil that he goes through. So when I was his age, I did go through the same exact thing presented in this manga. It was basically like reading an autobiography. It was super trippy for me, but all of the emotions and all the things that he felt, and kind of this idea of like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, it's very realistic. And I think unless you've gone through something like that, it's just hard to understand. But looking at him, I'm like, wow, that was me. And it took me years years of therapy, years of recovery, years of going through this depression cycle to finally accept what had happened. So overall, I appreciate the mangaka's attempt to paint a raw picture of what really happens. Yes, it might be frustrating as a manga reader, because as a manga reader, like, you just want things to kind of keep moving forward. But as a real life person who's been through this, I appreciate what they were trying to portray. So yes, a solid 9 out of 10 for me. I cannot wait to read Orange Future. That last volume comes out in 2023. And now to touch upon the 2 series on the thumbnail. First, we have volumes 1 to 6 of Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, and this was super hyped up to me. A lot of people, especially Suki-no's, was saying, Prof, you're gonna love this series, and I read it. I read the first 6 volumes. It definitely took me a couple volumes to get into because my expectations were so high, but this really does check all of the boxes when it comes to slice of life rom-com. It's so much fun. So if I can kind of give an idea of what this is, it's like Bakuman but with shoujo, and then you have Horimiya with its cast of characters. I think that the jokes are spot on, and I think that it's presented well in this 4-coma style so that things just move really fast. And this is a manga that you really just can't binge. You just read a chapter here or there, or you read a volume, you could take a break, you come back to it, and you just really understand what's going on. But just like Horimiya, this definitely has a problem of keeping the main thing the main thing. I just want more of the relationship between Nozaki-kun and Sakura-chan here. I just think that they're such great characters and they kind of get overshadowed by the side characters. But what I will say about Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun is that I do like the side characters. I like the side relationships. I like their personalities, and I like this whole vibe that's going on. I'm approaching this more as a slice of life about the manga industry more than rom-com stuff. So overall, I very much have enjoyed these first 6 volumes, and I cannot wait to continue to read more of this. Last up here in this section are the first 4 volumes of Kakegurui, and this really did fulfill my desire of playing Texas Hold'em and just gambling. So for those of you who don't know what this series is about, it follows an academy where the elite students of society gamble at a high stakes to continue to climb that ladder of society or become a house pet, lowest of the low, super intense drama. Really interesting games. The artwork in this manga is totally peak. It definitely takes the cake for top 10 artwork personally for me for the year, and I really enjoyed this volume 1. It just fulfilled all those desires of card games. Now here's my problem with the series. In volumes 2, 3, and 4, we're definitely going into the flaws of this series and why it's below an 8 on my anime list. Some of the games are just definitely a miss. It's not like the typical casino games that you really want to read. It's a very unique style of games for some of them. And also there is a huge over explanation of odds and what is going on with the game instead of actually doing the game. And because of this issue, there's a huge pacing problem in this manga where basically if you got 5 chapters in a volume, 3.5 chapters are just explaining the odds, and then you get a rushed 1.5 chapter of the actual game and the drama and the thriller, and it just doesn't do it for me, and it really got bad in volume 4. So that's why I definitely have red flags about this series, but I really do enjoy it, and I think it's a super interesting premise. Beautiful release by Yen Press, even with them being at $15 a volume. Definitely recommend getting this on sale, but if you're looking for something that's going to get your heart pumping, but you're gonna have to read a lot, then pick this one up. And last up here, I don't have it in my collection anymore, but I read the one-shot Go-Go Monster by Taiyo Matsumoto, and I know, I said in my unboxing, it's the most nice manga in my collection. I'm never gonna sell this thing. But look, somebody offered me a very nice price for it, and I said, okay, you know what, here you go. So before I sold it off, I was, let me read this thing. Let me see if this actually lives up to the price tag. No, it doesn't. Just like all of Taiyo Matsumoto's works, it's more of a coming-of-age story. It follows a boy who's kind of a loner. He goes to this school. There's a 4th story in this school, and he says that there's monsters there that influence what kind of happens in the school. And it's him growing up and these monsters kind of fading away, his only friends, while all the other kids are picking on him. There's 2 big issues with this manga. Number 1, it takes way too long to actually get into this story. I think by the time I started caring was around page 75, 80, and it just took way too long. Before then, I was just super bored. Also, there's a big problem with the ending. We have our main character, and then there's a couple of other important side characters, but the way that Taiyo Matsumoto organizes the ending and the prioritization of these stories with our characters, it just seemed a little bit jarring, a little bit confusing, and I got a little bit lost. The artwork is Taiyo Matsumoto, but it's early Taiyo Matsumoto, so it's really rough to say the least. Overall, it was an interesting read. You can tell that it was an early work. You can tell that there's not too much substance in it. I'm glad I read it. I recommend you read the scans of it. Only reason why you're going to pick this manga up is for the aesthetic look of the manga. I don't think this will ever be reprinted, so yeah, it will probably stay out of print. But yeah, Go-Go Monster, 6.75 out of 10 for me. Okay, moving on to the ongoing series. First up, we have the introduction to this video, To Your Eternity, Volume 17. And what the hell is going on here? I'm just gonna say this. To Your Eternity is a phenomenal manga. High praises. Volumes 1 to 12 are a masterpiece. 10 out of 10. And if you stopped reading at the end of volume 12, which finishes the arc, and it finishes it pretty conclusively, like you could end the story there, that would be great. But the mangaka decides to keep going, and from volume 13 on, we're in a new arc, and I just do not like the direction of this. I don't like how she uses the characters from the previous arc in this new world, and I don't like our main character Fushi and what he's doing. This is another manga where it's like, hey, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but it's just elevated in a whole new level here. Volume 17 was just like the biggest middle finger that you could give to us manga readers who've been supporting this series. I'm gonna give it one more volume just because I'm invested in the story, but after that I'm gonna drop it. I'm probably just gonna like give away volumes 13 to 17 and just keep volumes 1 to 12 in my collection and be like, yeah, that's the series. That's To Your Eternity. I'm gonna tell my grandkids that To Your Eternity is volumes 1 to 12. We won't talk about volume 13 on. So yes, honestly, this is the biggest disappointment this month. I'm just shocked. I'm shocked that this mangaka is doing this. I've never felt more infuriated when reading an ongoing series than this one. I've never seen a manga just take this downward slide like I've been seeing. I mean, honestly, it's so bad you should read it. Next up here is Blood on the Tracks, volumes 9 and 10. Volume 8 ended with the big sledgehammer, hey, the big mic drop, and then volumes 9 and 10 are the repercussions from that, along with volume 11. And this is just so messed up. It's like looking at a car accident on the freeway, and you just have to slow down and admire just the grotesqueness of what's happening. And you just feel so bad. You have this like pit in your stomach, but it's just so crazy to look at. I love this direction. I love that Shuzo Oshimi is doing this. It makes my blood boil. It makes my heart race. This is definitely my favorite Shuzo Oshimi work of all time and a top 25 manga in my collection. Next up here is Skip and Loafer volume 5. Volume 4 ended a really intense arc, so now we're back to slice of life cuteness overload, and I am so happy that we're back to the main thing being the main thing in this series. Super cute episodes. I just love all of the interactions with our characters, especially our main characters, but even more especially our side characters. I love all of the characters in this series, which is saying a lot because I usually have a big pet peeve towards a large cast of characters. And as I continue to read this series, I absolutely love our main character girl here. I think she's just so well written, so wholesome, but also is really reflective on her life and is a really great friend. It's just such a great series, so unexpected in this manga conglomerate industry, so highly recommend this one. So next up here is Black Clover volume 30, and in my notes for this specific volume I just wrote bam pow. This basically transitions from one battle to another battle in the Spade Kingdom arc. It's very well done. I absolutely love the battles. I think they're super cool. Artwork is peak as always, and as I continue to change my manga taste from battle shonen, it's not my favorite thing in the world, Black Clover has continued to stay a constant even though my tastes have changed. So that's saying a lot for a series. Next up is Ragna Crimson volume 6, and this manga's volume volume specifically made me really reflect on some of the issues of this series. So this is a very action-packed volume. There's a lot of things that are coming together here in this arc. You've got all these different sides coming together, and the characters themselves and the different teams are really interesting. The problem is actually with the execution of the story and the pacing of the battles, some of the decisions of our characters with their powers, and you're like, oh, what is going on? You know, and with our main character as well. So there's definitely some issues that are causing this manga series to like stumble and fall a little bit, but I am curious to see how this continues to progress. I'm invested in the story. I want to continue to read it, but yeah, I can see the problems in the series that I just didn't see in the first 3 volumes. Next up here is Tokyo Revengers Omnibus 2, so volumes 3 and 4. I'm loving the direction of the story. I like the twist at the end of this omnibus. I think it was very well done. Definitely continues to keep me invested. And I'm a big fan of manga with like delinquents, high school delinquents. So because I was like a nerdy kid in high school, I was like the band nerd that like never did any of this stuff. So like I am living vicariously through these characters. So I really enjoyed the action. I just think it's so cool. It reminds me of GTO the early years. So A+ for me. I'm really curious to see how this manga like completely just falls apart in that chapter in the early 200s. I mean, I'm more invested in that than ever, especially with how strong these first 4 volumes have been. Next up here is Kaguya-sama Love is War, volume 23, and my goodness, this really continues to escalate itself, especially for volume 22. We're in the final arc, so the mangaka has just basically decided to keep the main thing, and it's fantastic. However, we do get introduced to another side thing that's going on, but it's a side thing that I actually care about and I'm invested in, and I can't wait to see how it continues to function. But there's so much great comedy in here. As always, Chika is definitely my favorite character in the whole series. I love how she interacts with all of the different characters, and I like a lot of the throwbacks that are presented in this volume specifically. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely my top 5 rom-coms of all time, and I highly recommend this one. Next up here is Run on Your New Legs Volume 2, a great continuation from Volume 1. I really enjoyed the educational aspect of it, learning about prosthetic legs and just running track in general. I like that we get a lot of new character introductions here, and I think it's done very well. I think that the series is pacing great for a 5-volume series. I can't wait to see how it ends. I definitely think it's a dark horse right now in terms of the ongoing series. Next up is Blue Lock Volume 2. I don't need to talk about Blue Lock. We're all reading it. It was good. It wasn't as great as Volume 1, but that was because Volume 1 was a 10 out of 10. I love the artwork. I love the vibes that it's giving off. Even if you don't like soccer, this has that thriller drama aspect to it that's going to make you want to keep reading it. And I also like the mystery thing that was presented in here, and it made me like, oh, like what's going on, and like trying to put the puzzle pieces together. So that was a lot of fun. Next up is Phantom of the Idol Volume 2. I read Volume 1 and did a first impressions on it. I'll leave a little card. I said it was an okay first volume. The premise is interesting enough. The execution was okay. The comedy was great. The art was good, but it wasn't anything mind-blowing, so I was going to give it another volume. And this volume was great. I was very surprised. I did not think that this was going to get me invested in the series, but I'm definitely invested in the characters. I'm invested to what they do. I'm starting to like the characters more, which I was like kind of mellow tone with the characters, but I really like the characters now. I think that this is a really fun look into the idol world with some, you know, cherries of supernatural stuff in here. So yes, I will continue to read this. I'll pick up volume 3, and it will also, it's still on the chopping block, don't get me wrong, it's still there, but I'm definitely more absorbed into the story than I was last month. And last here in this stack is Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, Volume 11. This series continues to go up and up and up. Nagatoro is a fantastic rom-com character. I'm really enjoying her progression. I like that this keeps the main thing, Nagatoro and Senpai, and you have these side characters, no BS with them. They just enhance that main relationship. It's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying all of the episodes going on, and I think that they're super creatively written, and the stories are very varied. I used it again. So yes, Nagatoro, I will continue to pick this up. It's really fun. The last ongoing series that I read to completion, but I sold it off, was Sigwatera, volumes 5 to 6 in that 3rd omnibus that completed the series. Early 2000s rom-com. If I could kind of help paint a picture here, it's like Shuzo Oshimi rom-com. It's a very random series. You have delinquents, you have this loner boy who gets bullied, but he starts dating this girl who's like super attractive and they're into motorcycles. So you've got this whole vibe going on. She's an older girl, she's in college, he's in high school, and you're just rooting for this guy. But it's a coming of age story. And it's really interesting because the way that it ends, it's kind of a really good depiction on life. Like you have your high school experience in your life, and then you grow up and you're an adult, and a lot of that stuff becomes obsolete, very similar to Flowers of Evil. A lot of people don't like the ending. It was like a big middle finger to them. Personally, I liked it because I think that it just kind of gives off the vibe of what this story was about. But I read it and I was like, you know what? It was good. 7 out of 10, solid 7 out of 10. But I'm not going to reread it. I have no yearning to reread it. So I went ahead and sold it off to give to another person. Highly recommend you check out this series, but get it for a discount because you're not going to want to pay full price for this. I'm so embarrassed. I literally recorded the outro and I forgot to talk about these 2 manga. These are ongoing series that I read from last month that I'm continuing to read this past September. And first up here, we have Bungo Stray Dogs, volumes 3 to 9. And I said in volumes 1 and 2, like I wasn't super invested yet. Like I couldn't see what the hype was all about. But what I love about this manga is that I just continue to go in this uphill trajectory. I love all of the different characters and the different teams. I'm super invested in all the abilities that were presented in all of these characters. It's just such a great read. Objectively, this is a very strong manga, very good cast of characters, great pacing, beautiful artwork, and also a really interesting premise with great twists and turns. So yes, for a seinen series, this definitely gets my stamp of approval now. Volume 9 ended the arc, and that's where I stopped to continue to read some other stuff. I can't wait to see what volume 10 on brings, because now this world has just exploded after volume 9. I just love it. I think it's just beautifully written. And last up here is Yakutate Japan. I read volumes 11 to 14. This finishes the Monaco tournament arc, and then I went ahead and stopped to read some other things. Love Yakutate Japan. I don't need to talk about it any more than I have. Competitive bread baking, lots of fun, early 2000s vibe. So it's super, super funny, very raunchy, very comedic. I love bread baking. I think that it's a super interesting premise to write about, and for this mangaka to continue to keep my interest in this really weird story, A+ for me. So this is a really, really great series. Highly recommend. And that is it for my manga reading log for the month of September. I hope you enjoy these types of videos. I just want to be able to give you guys a viewpoint into series that I really, really enjoy without you fearing spoilers or anything like that. So I hope I kind of turned your head into the right direction on what series to grab and what series not to grab. As always, if you enjoy my videos, please hit that like button, tap the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you know when more of my videos come out, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, sorry, Yotuba. Take care now. Bye-bye.